Success in anything requires a definite set of principles and procedures, and the more you adhere to the principles of success, the more of it you will get. The first set of these principles that one must master are beliefs. These are certain mindsets and ways of thinking that will make you super successful. They will enable you to take the right actions and make the right decisions. Whereas, on the other hand, there are mindsets, beliefs, and states that will make your life miserable. One of these states is a feeling of low self worth or low self esteem. In this video, I will explain signs that people with a low self esteem often display. Obviously, by avoiding these things yourself, you can improve your own self esteem to a great extent. In the book Think and Grow Rich, author Napoleon Hill explains how any great venture or process is first conceived in the head before it is turned into its physical form. This means that whatever you can see around, including everything that adds value to your life, was once nothing but a thought or an idea in someone's head. Then that idea was transformed into its physical equivalent. Now, if our thoughts create our actions and our physical manifestations, then it simply means that whatever is responsible for our thoughts has to be the basis for our success and achievement. Well, that whatever is our beliefs. Our beliefs about ourselves, about the society, about other people, and about what can or cannot be done. People with a low self-esteem do not consider themselves worthy of any sort of achievement, and so their beliefs are very limiting in nature. Such people can have all the necessary potential but aren't willing to quote-unquote pull the trigger. No matter how strong a structure or a building is, if its foundation is weak, it will fall apart. On the other hand, even if such a person ends up creating something that is immensely valuable, they will still never be able to communicate its value to the world with a defeating mindset. Or, in simple words, they will not be able to sell it, and they will not be able to influence people in any way. Defeating beliefs will lead to defeating thoughts. Defeating thoughts will lead to flawed ideas or no ideas at all. The human mind is wired in a way that it keeps spitting out negative and disempowering thoughts almost all the time. But it is also true that we have the choice of not accepting those thoughts. And so, to solve this problem, you must deliberately make the choice of not accepting limiting thoughts, while simultaneously providing sufficient reasons for that from the real world. Selflessness is generally considered to be a good thing, but the kind of selflessness we often see in the real world does not come from a healthy place. Of course, it would be great if everyone was selfless mainly because they were internally fulfilled, felt a sense of genuine gratitude, and so wanted to be genuinely kind and helpful. But for many selfless people, the selflessness comes from a place of lack and neediness, or from an insidious belief of not being good enough. This creates a poor sense of self and a doormat kind of persona. And other than some genuinely kind people, the world may not be kind enough to respect such people, treat them the way they want to be treated, or give them what they actually deserve according to their skills. The worst thing is that such a person thinks it is virtuous or noble to do so, which is actually a rationalization on their behalf. And so the abuse keeps going. If you're in this kind of situation, your solution is to develop the habit of doing things only for yourself. Of course, you may not be able to justify to yourself why you'd want to do so, but the reason that you don't feel good enough is probably because you have ignored yourself for so long, or because you're being your own worst enemy by engaging in self-sabotaging activities. As humans, we have an animal part to our nature. This part of us is mainly concerned with physical needs and survival. And for social animals, survival depends upon social status to a great extent. This means that our animal nature perceives raising social status as very essential for our survival. There are a lot of ways to raise one's status, but one of those ways, which is a negative one, is bullying. Bullying is essentially an attempt to quote-unquote transfer or steal social status from someone else. By tolerating psychological or physical abuse, you're essentially annihilating yourself and giving quote-unquote status points to the abuser from an evolutionary standpoint. So, if you believe that the abuser will stop the abuse if you just step down or tolerate, why would they? Now, an important thing to remember is that often such an abuse or bullying doesn't come off as a single strong blow. That might be the case with little kids or young school boys. But in the real adult world, it actually comes in small incremental steps. A little subtle put down every now and then, which keeps escalating, sometimes without any limits. To avoid such negative experiences, you should deal with it upfront and right in the start. Tolerating the abuse in the hopes that the abuser will stop the abuse would be your single biggest mistake and will further lower your self-esteem. The best solution, however, is to remove yourself from such situations in a calm and respectful way. Self-hatred is the opposite of self-love or self-admiration. The hate for oneself may be justified by some reason, such as not being able to follow through one's plans, consciously doing things that you know are harmful, never being able to get the approval of parents, etc. Or in some other cases, there can be seemingly no reason, meaning that it is unconscious. There are two steps to overcome self-hatred. First, you bring to light all of the reasons that cause self-hatred in you if they are unconscious. This requires a great deal of self-awareness and effort. The second step is to overcome or disregard those reasons. If your reasons for self-hatred involve other people, then you need to either work on your relationships or cut out some of them. If your reason for self-hatred involves your own self or everyone else regardless of who they are, then you need to work on your own mindset and life situation. When you try to influence or change the opinion of someone with a low self-esteem, one of two things tend to happen. Either the person completely accepts the idea without any personal thought, or they completely reject the idea assuming it was a personal attack. Similarly, in some other variations, they would almost blindly accept and adopt someone else's opinions, likes and dislikes, etc. This is usually done in an attempt to fit into a certain group in order to feel a sense of belonging or for validation. Of course, this isn't always the case, as there are people who are generally more agreeable or more disagreeable for different reasons. The intense feeling of not being good enough creates expectations of being rejected by other people. And so people with a low self-esteem often find themselves taking things way too seriously even when they shouldn't. They see rejection or disapproval even when there is no rejection or disapproval. Another reason why this happens is because the person gets too much into their head. They are so invested in their ego that it becomes extremely difficult to disidentify from it. But for the person with a low self-esteem, that ego is usually a protective mechanism, like a scar protecting the wound. The reason why the low self-esteem person takes things, especially insults, so seriously is because they are way too oversensitive and can easily be triggered. The more rejections or abusive behavior the person has tolerated, the more oversensitive he or she will be. However, this does not mean that a healthy person experiences no negative emotions when provoked. In fact, they may feel them at the same level. But the difference is that they can handle it. They can control themselves and their actions or reactions. A person with a high self-esteem has the ability to remain icy and non-reactive when faced with petty dislikes. Trolls or bullies that are constantly in search for weaker targets are subconsciously aware of their low worth or status. By taking advantage of people that are on an even lower level, they attempt to raise the bar for themselves. Although in the short run, this feels good and raises their worth, but in the long run, the vampire has to constantly search for new blood. And in the real world, this has consequences. So often the troll ends up either giving up on the nasty habit and mature, resorting to other socially positive ways to raise the status bar, or he ends up alienating himself. Victims attract abusers simply because they are the opposite ends of the same coin. Like attracts like. and a truly healthy person is pretty much immune to any sort of negativity. Not always, but often people with a low self esteem are enablers of people who are entitled, highly narcissistic, or those who think they deserve something for nothing. In such cases, the starting point of moving towards a higher self esteem is simply to remove or disregard such people.